Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining today. We have quite a nice number of participants. I'm very, very glad to see all of you here. So welcome to our VVB Quarterly Training for this past Q3 of 2025. We're going to talk about some updates and some things that have been happening in the past months. And it's going to be quite exciting. It's been a while since we've met. I think the last quarterly training was in July. I've missed you, so it's actually nice to be back and have you again with us. It's been busy months, so we had summer, and then in September we had a face-to-face workshop in India, in New Delhi, which was really amazing to meet many of you. And we are also busy with new learning platform we are setting up for you guys. So yeah, it's going to be exciting months coming. So stay with us. Let's start with our session today. A couple of house rules. So we are recording this session, and as usual, I'm going to share both the link to recording and to the slides after the session. And if you have any questions, you can use the Q&A box. Or afterwards, when we have the Q&A part, when you see a Q&A slide on the presentation, you can feel free to raise your hand. If you have any questions now, please contact me directly or put it in the Q&A. I would like to introduce today's speakers. Today we have Marta and Lokesh. They are going to talk with us about the Paris Agreement alignment. And then we have also Giovanna and Gil, who are going to talk to us about more specific topics. So Giovanna will be covering the soil organic carbon model guidelines, and Gil will be talking about engineered removals activity requirements. Super exciting. Before we start, I would like to have a little poll with you. So if you could, you can either scan the QR code on the screen, or I can actually also launch the poll on Teams. Give me 1 second. And here you go. You should be seeing it appearing on your screen. So as usual, I'm curious where you're joining us from. Where are you connecting? What's the country where you are? And then we have a couple of more questions related to a few webinars that Gold Standard has done in the past weeks. One would be just the webinar on the Paris Alignment Agreement, which we had yesterday, and the other webinar that was on the 14th of October on the soil organic carbon model. So let's look at a couple of results. I see majority of you is in India. We also have USA, Indonesia, the Netherlands, Colombia. I see a lot of countries today all over the world. This is so amazing. Turkey, Malaysia. Oh, super nice. Great. Keep it coming. Keep it coming. And next, I'm going to go for next question just for interest of time. Okay, so webinar on the Paris Alignment Agreement. We have many of you have been in that webinar. That's very nice. So you're up to date with information. And I hope the one that answered no, that you can watch the recording soon. And the webinar on soil organic carbon also had quite some nice affluence. Okay, that's nice, 52%. Great. Thank you so much. I would say I would not take too much more time, but I want to go through the agenda first. So as I said, we're starting with the Paris Agreement alignment updates, where Marta and Lokesh will talk about the why, what's the reason behind this, why we're doing all these methodological changes, procedural changes, and also what are timelines. Then we have Gilly, who will be talking about some SDG impact tool updates. We have quite some interesting stuff coming from that side. And then also these new methodological tools that we have, emission from fossil fuel combustion and emission from freight transport. And then we are doing a little bit of a different thing today. We will wrap up about an hour in the meeting. But we are going to move into breakout rooms. You can already start thinking which topic you would like to join. So you are totally free to join the breakout room that you prefer. So I will open the room and you will be able to go either to activity requirements, engineered removals with Gilly, or to the room number 2, new organic carbon model guidelines with Giovanna. So yeah, I think it's quite an exciting agenda. I would like to then have Marta give you the word to start, kick us off.
Thank you so much, Anna, and welcome everybody. This is a big topic, so I think we can have many sessions on this, and they will still probably not be enough. We had this session during the calibration workshop in India. There was a big workshop yesterday with more than 450 participants, and I'm sure many of you were there. But let's dive a little bit more into the details from a VVB perspective, and you'll hear a lot about, as Anna said, why we're doing this, a little bit, a lot about the methodological changes that are coming, and a bit about process and timelines. For those of you who joined the webinar yesterday or have followed our publications in the last many years, already in 2021, Gold Standard announced that we will be aligning with the Paris Agreement, and we've been following very closely what the UNFCCC is doing on Article 6, the Paris Agreement creating mechanism, and have been adapting our requirements to that. The reason for that is that we want to make sure that the credits that we issue at Gold Standard remain eligible and valued across voluntary and compliance linked markets. So you know that we work very closely with governments on Article 6.4, 6.2, and to make sure governments have capacity to engage in these mechanisms. And we want to make sure that our requirements are fit for purpose for these markets, and also, of course, the CCPs, and everything that may allow the activities that reduce emissions or contribute to climate change mitigation and sustainable development to access more carbon finance. We want to reinforce the integrity and ambition of the organization, and we want to make sure that carbon credits really contribute to the raising global ambition. So we're not in the Kyoto era anymore. We're now in the Paris era, where we know that we need to limit emissions to below 1.5 degrees, and we need to adapt the way that we do things, even in the carbon market, for that. We also want to continue to apply best practice and to keep Gold Standard at the forefront of the market by applying the best available science and the evolving best practice, which is what we've always been doing. And this is what you expect from us. So this is the why behind the many changes that are coming in the next months and year from now. And we will speak more in detail about these changes. But the main thing that you should remember is that all Gold Standard VRs issued with a vintage of 2026, not issued in 2026, but issued with a vintage 2026 or later, shall be verified against an approved Paris Agreement aligned methodology. That is the basis. This is the North Star of the alignment that we're talking about. So we have several things. We have vintage of 2026 or later. So this means verification. So something will have to happen with verifications. Shall, which means it's mandatory. There's no deviations, no, I want to do it differently, I want to opt out. So all Gold Standard VRs shall be verified against an approved PA-aligned methodology. So the methodologies will change according to the Paris Agreement, according to the requirements that allow us to align with the Paris Agreement and with a higher ambition. And the methodologies will change. So the projects will have to change so that they can be verified against these methodologies. We will get into much more detail on all of these points. It's mandatory for all. The changes are necessary and are mandatory for all project activities seeking 2026 or higher vintages. And no waivers. There will be no deviations. So there is no, we will make sure that we communicate so much about this that there's no one that can say they haven't heard, and there will be no deviations for the mandatory application of these Paris Agreement aligned methodologies. So this is the most important thing that you have to remember because everything derives from this slide. And this is how we're going to do it. So Gold Standard will publish requirements in terms of rules and procedures, standards and tools, and aligned methodologies. You already have seen a lot of the rules and procedures and standards and tools published for stakeholder consultation. And I'll show you which ones are currently in stakeholder consultation so that you can add your comments this week and next. Then project developers will align. Project developers, even with currently certified projects, will have to change the design and monitoring plan to apply the new methodology, or to the aligned methodology, let's say, not the new methodology, the new version of the methodology. And they'll have to start monitoring according to the new monitoring plan and the new calculations that the methodology requires. Then the VVBs will assure. They will take trainings and exams. We're starting to prepare. So this is the beginning of it. This is a non-obligatory training, but we will create a training course and exams for VVBs and auditors to take, because VVBs will have to conduct these alignment audits to ensure that projects are applying these aligned methodologies. And VVBs will have to conduct verification differentiating the 2026 and onward vintages from the previous vintages. And then Gold Standard will issue Gold Standard VRs to activities 2025 and before. They don't need to be aligned. Of course, a project developer might decide to align also previous vintages, but it's not necessary. And 2026 plus vintages, they will have to be aligned, and only then they will be issued by Gold Standard. And they will be marked as such in the registry. Now, let's talk about the actual changes that we expect will come within these aligned methodologies. This is an overview. It's a very big slide, bear with me, but there is several different aspects. So we have additionality will change, baselines will change, leakage, data quality, and ongoing financial need. These aspects will change in different ways. Usually Gold Standard would only talk about Gold Standard specific requirements like how do we do SDG monitoring and how do we do safeguards and stakeholder consultations. But here we're talking about the absolute basics of the carbon market, the way we have been doing things for the past 15 or 20 years. This is changing now, and we all need to adapt. We all need to change all these absolute axioms that we had in our minds. So how does additionality change? Projects must prove regulatory surplus beyond existing laws. This is not very different from how it was before, but it will be stricter. There will be a stronger proof of the decisive role of carbon finance. So again, not very different, but stricter. A new term that we don't usually see in the Kyoto era is to demonstrate no lock-in through a lock-in analysis. We'll speak about what that means in detail in a bit. We have common practice analysis, which is also stricter. We have clear alignment with host country NDCs. How this is going to be implemented is Gold Standard is publishing requirements on additionality. Actually, they're already published and valid, that have to be implemented by methodologies. So each methodology that will be aligned will create requirements for projects that or activities that apply this methodology for all of these aspects of additionality. There is a tool that is proposed for common practice analysis, and that is now under consultation. So basically what VVBs would have to verify against is against the methodology and not against the additionality standard. And they would align, they would verify or validate against, validate against the tool. And here they would have to have country expertise in order to make sure that there's clear alignment with the host country's NDCs. For baselines, we have a similar picture. We have more conservative calculations that are below business as usual, mandatory downward adjustments to estimated baseline. So these downward adjustments are to ensure that we have this ambition in climate action that we talked about in the previous slides. And downward adjustments will be defined through a tool that is very, very comprehensive, very explicit, and very clear on how you define this downward adjustment factor. You can also comment on this in the stakeholder consultation right now. There will be consideration of all enforced national policies and consideration of suppressed demand where relevant, which will be part of the methodology. But you can see that country expertise is also important for baseline setting as for additionality. So very important that auditing teams have very good understanding of the local policies and ambitions of the country. Then there's leakage. There's a broader scope and mandatory deductions for leakage that come from upstream and downstream possible emissions. There's data quality changes, so there will be specific formal uncertainty assessments and higher standards for data quality, and ongoing financial need, which becomes obligatory and recurrent. All of this will be set up in the methodology, so VVBs will have to validate against the methodology. So in terms of additionality principles, prior consideration, you know what that is. The project was planned with carbon finance having a decisive role. Regulatory surplus, no lock-in, which means the project does not continue emission-intensive technologies or practices and is aligned with the country's NDCs and the Paris Agreement. Then impacts are additional compared to the baseline scenario, which means the project's, just as it was before. And then no common practice. There's stricter requirements and ongoing financial need. These are the additionality principles now in this Paris Agreement era. So you would have, if you look at the additionality standard that is set up for methodologies to apply, you have this graph there where basically the way that you assess additionality is you first do regulatory surplus analysis, then lock-in analysis, and then you choose one of these three approaches: investment analysis, barrier analysis, or performance analysis, which is a bit new. If you choose if the methodology allows and the project activity chooses, they apply one of these, and then they go to common practice analysis, if not directly to demonstrating additionality. There is a tool for common practice analysis. So you can look at the requirements for additionality demonstration that are already published and applicable on the gold standard for the global goals website, and on the gold standard website under consultations, you can still take a look at the common practice analysis tool. They will be applied to the methodology, and the methodology will be applied in the project, which the VVBs will have to then audit. Then baseline setting, we have business as usual scenario, which will be more strictly calculated because, for example, because of data uncertainty requirements. And then we have either suppressed demand or downward adjustment. For downward adjustment, this is a very new requirement, and it's a fixed annual coefficient to adjust the crediting baseline to ensure increasing ambition over time. So the baseline reduces over time, so that if the project, the difference between the baseline and the project scenario decreases also over time, and the number of carbon credits will probably decrease over time as well. There is a tool for that, as I said, under consultation, and the selection is based on national or sectoral download emission factor, group of comparison countries, depending on development tier, economic structure, vulnerability level, and national net zero target status. and a default factor as ambition floor of 1.25%, which is the current proposal. Is the correct, so the validation would imply is the correct factor applied following the DAF tool, and is the factor applied correctly throughout the ER calculations. Then we have suppressed demand, which is quite the opposite. We have, as you know, suppressed demand is already an established concept in both UNFCCC and gold standard, but we have a new standard proposed for suppressed demand, which is much more explicit and much more comprehensive, where we define the minimum service level for a range of different technologies and services, then identify and justify suppressed demand, and then the minimum service quality standards. What does it mean to have electricity? What does it mean to have light? What does it mean to have heating? How much heating is enough heating? Right. Then we have lock-in and risk analysis, in which projects need to avoid using the extending those types of technologies that keep carbon emissions high, such as, for example, continuing the use of diesel generators or low efficiency power stations or building new ones. That would not be allowed. That would lock in emissions. There's exceptions to that. For example, if the project is under the technology lifetime is under 10 years. So the projects need to be consistent with the host country's long-term low emission development strategy, and the lock-in risk is embedding these high emission technologies or baselines that delay transition in net zero. So very important to, this will change the eligibility of certain projects and project types and technologies and services. Excuse me. Now let's think about what that would mean in terms of what kind of processes and procedures we would need in order to implement all this. I told you a little bit, but this is a lot of information, and just to process it, let's have a small quiz. I haven't said these things, but you can try and answer the questions so that we can think together, and my colleague Lokesh would continue the presentation.
I've posted the link in the chat for everybody who cannot scan the link.
So what type of audit is the alignment audit? If we have if a project would have to apply an aligned methodology, what kind of audit would be required? Okay, one person thinks it's a validation. Right. There's 4 different questions, so please feel free to click through all of them. And for the interest of time, I'm just going to start showing the answers. Indeed, this will be, because the projects will already be certified, this will be applicable to all gold standard projects that want to issue credits with 2026 vintage. So we're actually talking about something like a design certification, no, design change validation, indeed. So most of you are correct. So we would be applying a new methodology to the same project that is already certified. For the next question, indeed, there will be a reduction of the number of projects eligible under gold standard. And there will be some reduction in the emission reductions or removal calculations, indeed, for many of the projects, which will be combined with a large part of our portfolio having to apply the new fraction of non-renewable biomass calculations. So there we will see a lot of reduction of the carbon credits issued from 2026 vintages on. And then what would be the effect of this on VVB's work? Well, there will be more work, indeed. So thank you for that. Means that we've sent the message correctly. Thank you. Lokesh, would you like to continue with some procedural changes?
Thanks, Martha. So let us walk through the procedural changes that are coming along this Paris Agreement alignment work. Next slide, please. So as it has been told, all projects need to apply a Paris Agreement aligned methodology, and these Paris Agreement aligned methodologies will slowly start coming in for public consultation and finally for a final publication. As it is said, vintage 26 onwards credits cannot be issued after the alignment, and there are sunset dates which are set for this. No new project will be allowed to be design certified on this after that sunset date, which is given in the document that is under consultation. And for these Paris Agreement alignment audit would be required at the project or program level. VVB training would be conducted for an audit. There would be trainings, and then there would also be exams to check the effectiveness of those trainings. Next, please. Verification process shall clearly differentiate credits for vintages that are up to 31st December 2025 and beyond. That means if there is a monitoring period that spans across 2025 and 26, it should be clearly differentiated that how many credits are coming for the period up to 31st December 2025, which can be issued on the current version of methodologies, which may not be Paris aligned. While any credit from 1st January 26 onwards have to essentially be issued for Paris Agreement aligned methodology. So any vintage of monitoring report that is spanning in these 2 years, those have to be clearly differentiated within that report. And if those are separate, of course, separate reporting would be required. Next, please. Gold Standard has updated its product requirements to align requirements related to Article 6 authorizations with the latest UNFCCC decisions adopted in the previous COP. And such authorization letters need to be submitted by the project developers. These authorization documentation confirm that the credits which are going to be issued would be applied for corresponding adjustment. And VVB's role is to check the authorization document as part of the project audit. So this is independent of the methodology alignment process, something which is already updated in the product requirements, and VVBs can check these in the current audits. Next, please. Regarding timelines related to Paris Agreement alignment at methodology and project level, we have already published document related to or standard related to methodology requirements. And similarly for additionality standard for methodologies, these two documents have already been published, and these two are applicable for methodologies which will be taken for public consultation and publication as per Paris aligned methodologies. Methodology standard for baseline has completed its public consultation, and it will go for necessary approvals and final publication very soon. And so also standard methodology standard on suppressed demand and methodology standard on leakage. Mind you that all these standards are methodology standards. That means these are to be applied to the methodologies by the methodologies while being drafted, but eventually will have impact on the projects that are going to be certified on those methodologies. So having a look on these methodologies beforehand would help VVBs a lot to really acclimatize to the new process or new versions of methodologies that would be coming, which would be Paris Agreement aligned. Two tools, common practice tool and downward adjustment tool, those are under draft stage, and their public consultation is in progress. And soon after public consultation is over, and depending on the comments received, those will be taken further into the process for final publication. All these documents would impact the alignment of methodologies with Paris Agreement, and eventually with on at the project level implementation as well. Next, please. So currently, as I said, that we have two tools under consultation, which are open for public comments. One being common practice analysis tool, and the second one being on the downward adjustment factor determination tool. And I would not go in much detail of these tools, but it is important to mention that there are some some important considerations that VVBs must have while assessing implementation of these tools in the methodologies, or if those are applied at project level through a reference in the methodology. Downward adjustment, for example, is dependent on countries' specific net zero achievement announcement, and also long-term strategy of countries, depending on their economic status and other criteria, as Martha explained earlier. And this has to be carefully seen that right application of those factors are applied. And similarly for common practice analysis tools, the penetration rate and other requirements which are enshrined into that. The first document, which is Paris Agreement alignment related requirements and FAQs and guidelines, those would having a look on these documents would help VVBs to clarify questions that they might have in their mind on how to implement these, and these guidelines are detailed on what VVBs should look at while auditing the alignment at the project level. So I would invite auditors to have a look on this document, and also we would be grateful if you have any comments on these. Kindly share with us on the portal, on the comment portal. Next, please. Publication of updated requirements and methodology framework is already in progress. Publication of revised methodologies, Paris Agreement aligned methodologies, is already in progress. So any new methodology that we are publishing now, or we will be publishing now, would be Paris aligned. So you would not see any new methodology coming on the website, or coming being revised and published on the methodology that is not Paris aligned. So any methodology that will be published now, either new or revised, would be Paris aligned. Stakeholder engagement and procedural alignment is currently underway. And from 1st January onwards, new methodologies would come into effect. Of course, not all methodologies would come together in effect. There would be batch-wise implementation. We would see in the next slide what those batches look like. Next, please. So first batch of methodologies to be aligned include the most frequently used methodologies, for example, TPD Tech and other Cook Stove methodologies, and also safe drinking water methodology. Also, afforestation, reforestation methodology is part of the first batch. And any new methodologies which are under development and being approved simultaneously. So all those would come into batch one. More information on batch wise or schedule of those methodology publication are available in the alignment document that is given at the bottom, link to which is given. Next, please. This is again implementation roadmap on reiteration of the fact that no 26 vintage VERs will be issued before project undergoes alignment audit, and the new auditor exams for conducting alignment audits will be also conducted. In this current quarter, we are aligning major methodologies, frequently used methodologies, and also setting up VVB trainings and project developer training. In the first quarter of the next year, we would align those other methodologies in batch 2 and 3. And auditors would be able to undertake trainings and exams for these alignments, and project developers would start monitoring as per the aligned methodologies. And we expect by the second quarter, Gold Standard would be able to issue credits for 26 vintages on the aligned methodologies. And of course, after VVBs and PDs have started their alignment audits and verification. Sunset dates are already explained in the consultation document. If there are any deviation from this, those may be given in the next version of the methodology, but chances are very low that any deviation would be there. Next, please. I would request maybe Martha or Giovanna to take on from here.
Sure. Let me take this one. So just to reiterate, we are preparing now more in-depth trainings on all these topics that we just talked about. These will be mandatory training sessions for all approved VVBs, not for all approved auditors. So each VVB will have to have a minimum number of auditors that take these exams and trainings. Important thing here is to know that in order to conduct an alignment audit, and you see a lot of alignment audits are coming up in 2026 and 2027, in order to conduct these audits, you would have to have at least one auditor that has passed this exam in the audit team. Otherwise, that team would not have the competence for that alignment audit. The important thing is that we will launch a Gold Standard learning platform in order to be able to track very well these trainings and exams. And we will have a webinar about this on November 4th. I think all of you should have received an email about this. If you haven't received an email, please write here in the chat or send us an email at vvb@goldstandard, and we will forward the invitation to you. And we expect to see you next week for the training session on the new Gold Standard learning platform, where you will see these trainings and exams coming up very soon. We have very little time for live questions, and we have answered some of the questions on the chat already. And there is a very extensive FAQs available and continuously updated. You can currently find it in the consultation page, but it will be transferred to the FAQ site, and it will be prominent everywhere. If you don't find what you're looking for there, you can still look at the Gold Standard webinar recording of the Paris Agreement alignment, which had a slightly different focus yesterday. And for further questions, you can always send your questions to help@goldstandard. Now, if there's any questions that we have not answered, then let us know.
I can maybe read out one question.
Sure.
What if the client wants to change methodology during the validation now? Maybe for the cash.
I think this is exactly the type of questions that we need to add to the FAQs. So we will do that, and we will provide a very specific answer with the full procedure. I think there was another question, which was, do we have any examples of aligned methodologies that are already published, Lokesh? I know that we had some under consultation, but I'm not sure if we've published any of those.
Yeah, so those methodologies have some of those methodologies have already received necessary approval and are being prepared for publication. So auditors would and stakeholders would see some of those new Paris Agreement aligned new methodologies published before year end.
All right.
Great, thank you. I see more messages coming in for the webinar link. I will respond to that soon. Yeah, maybe we can move on then to the next section.
Yes. And I would pass the word to my colleague, Gil Nemes. Gil, please.
Thank you. So quickly marching you through some information regarding the SDG impact tool. What's the latest information there? Next, please. I think the most important thing to note is that using the digital SDG impact tool is already mandatory since July last year. So any contributions and safeguard assessments of the activities is already needs to happen through this digital tool. Next, please. Now you might want to know that we've been working on expanding the monitoring indicators for this digital tool. We've launched a very productive call for input, stakeholders input. I'll expand to that in the next slide, please. So following this input in our own work, we've expanded these indicators to include several technologies needed for our current methodologies, but also for expected new methodologies and technologies and sectors listed here on the right in the gray box. So a few words about these. So these indicators would be relevant once they're integrated into the tool. It would be relevant both for the existing technologies that you might already be familiar with from the existing version of the SDG tool and for these new technology and sectors. These indicators are now categorized to adaptation, mitigation, possibly both, or possibly an impact which is not categorized under these two labels. Also important to note that indicators are all available. We kind of pre-sorted them, which indicators will be relevant for which technology, and you nonetheless have the ability to reach all of them for any technology if you see this necessary for the projects. Next, please. Now, very freshly published new core requirements of how to demonstrate that the indicators chosen are indeed appropriate for the activity. So until now, you've probably seen that activities are very flexible and to justify why a specific SDG would be relevant for the activity. And now this is more structured. There is a template to, in case you want to modify the already approved indicators or to propose new indicators in case you think that the activity would require that. Important note that part of your task will include to assess the selected indicator during the validation first, but also during the design certification renewal to make sure that all the selected indicators follow this new requirement. And lastly here, that if in case during performance review, you would notice that SDG impact was incorrectly chosen, you would have to request for the project a design change to basically change the monitoring section for this indicator. Next, please. A few words about our new tools. So we are starting work on tools to expand GS4GG. Basically, we want to reduce our dependency on CDM tools, rely a bit more on our in-house tools like you will see here. I will expand that in a minute. Just so you know, these tools are, you cannot call them mandatory. It's always an issue of the methodology. The newest methodologies would refer to the new tool, to new tools, and if they refer to the CDM tool, that would still apply. Over time, of course, we will try to phase out the CDM and move to either to our internal tools or to PACM tools, depending on the methodology. Next, please. So tool one, the tool for emissions from fossil fuel combustion, covering our three essential gases, CO2, methane, and 2O. And it's not meant to be applied for baseline emissions or removals. Again, don't be overly concerned with that. That will be references made in the approved methodologies. Next, please. And the next tool is about transportation from freight. It applies several options for the flexibility of the project activity, and of course, depending on what the methodology allows as well. Yeah, not much to expand on that. Next, please. Yeah. A little break if you have questions specific to what I just presented. Otherwise, I did not see anything yet. And if there is still no more questions, then let's continue to the next section. Anna, I think you would take it.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are wrapping up part one of this training today. Please don't leave yet. If you want to stay for the breakout rooms, because those are coming up next. But I forgot to mention it before in the agenda. If you have to leave because you don't want to join the breakout rooms, you can do it after I am wrapping up. So feel free to do that. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this slide, I added all the links that have been shown to you on this in the slide deck today. So you don't have to go back and look for them in each slide. You can, but if you just want to have a rundown of all the links, you can go to this one slide. Of course, if you have any questions, as usual, feel free to reach out to us at vvb@goldstandard.org. And next slide, please. I would like to do a little bit more sponsoring of the webinar. We have been talking about our new Gold Standard Learning Platform. You have heard enough. You have heard it enough for now. But as we said, it's next week, Tuesday. We are going to talk about this new platform, why we have it, what are the key features. We are going to walk you through the platform as well to give you a demo of it. And then we'll talk about how to access it, because each one of you will receive access credentials, and there will be time for questions, of course. So I have posted the link in the chat. If you have not signed up, you can do that through the link you prefer when the time zone that works best for you. And as I said in the chat, please let me know if you have not received the invitation, because I can send it again. Basically, we have sent invitation to all of you who have been like we were on a list from your VVB managers on the auditor competence list that we have. So Please check with your manager if you have not received the invite, because you might not be on that list, and maybe you need to be on that list so that we can add you as a user on the platform. And I think I have one last slide next on the breakout rooms. Yes, thank you. So this is, I'm going to open the breakout room now. So as I said, if you don't want to join the breakout room, you can leave. But if you can, please stay with us. I'm going to open it now. I will not assign you to any room, so you can choose where you want to be. And one second. So I'm going to open rooms now. And you should be able to click on any room you want to join. So room 1 will be with Gil Namesh on engineered removals, and room 2 will be with Giovanna on the new SOC model guidelines. We will be having a presentation for about 10-15 minutes, and then there will be some time for questions. So in total, you will be there for about 25 minutes. And yeah, so if you
So about engineered removals, we have a few interesting updates for you. You might have seen this before. There was a very useful GS webinar, and I would recommend to those who have not had a chance to view this, to see it as well. We had a panel discussion there from a few market experts as well as from our own CEO and COO. So might be useful. Apology. Might be useful for you to see this seminar. Now, back to you. A few things to cover the basics of what this is about. So removals, we're talking about human-based activities, anthropogenic activities to remove CO2, or in the future it could include some other greenhouse gases from the atmosphere, and store these in most commonly in geological storage, but also terrestrial, ocean reservoirs, or in products. The engineered part refers to the need to rely on the technology to deliver these solutions, processes that will not occur spontaneously in nature, and or use technological solution to accelerate natural processes. It's important to note that we do not want removals to replace emission reductions. This is something that we in Gold Standard, the entire scientific community agrees has to happen in parallel. And this is something we want to see in the activities as well. Of course, now we're talking specifically about removals. And it's important to note also that engineered removals activities have built we rely a lot on our own integrity of Gold Standard to step into this field of engineered removals in order to be able to offer some baseline of requirements to assure the integrity and the focus on people and nature as is our focus. basically not to leave this market only to actors which might otherwise not have the same focus that we are proposing or introducing here. More specifically, stepping into the engineered removals. So we have these activities, activity requirements have been published earlier this year and cover several approaches to direct engineered removals, including direct air capture, BECS, mineralization, and a few more. I'll expand that in the next slides. Key features there. One is the permanence and risk reversals. I think it's very obvious that for such technologies, the issue of reversal risk is very predominant. We have the specific requirements for contributing to a buffer tool, and we also have to be able to address, the methodology has to address the issue of potential non-permanence and reversals. So on top of the buffer tools, there has to be measures to reduce reversal risks. As for robust monitoring and life cycle assessment, we insist on doing this life cycle assessment because it's especially some of these technologies basically will have a high potential for emissions downstream of the activity itself, and or even upstream, and we have to take these things into consideration to make sure that our quantification is correct. When we also design the methodologies to encourage innovative and robust monitoring strategies, and this is a field that is continuously evolving, and I think that's where the ability to be flexible and to increase ambition and innovation in MRV would play a big role, does play a big role. As for sustainable development and safeguards, so it's very important to include social and environmental safeguards in these technologies, which could have potential regional ramification. They could have an impact on groundwater. They could have an impact on the forestry level. And through these secondary impact on local population and life and nature, all this has to be safeguarded. On top, very much aligned to our usual approach, the projects have to contribute to two SDGs on top of SDG 13, which is the climate change mitigation. The requirement is still to have this contribution very directly associated with the project. We recognize this is somewhat limiting, but for our own requirements, this is still necessary from the projects. Lastly, here you would see the alignment with external frameworks such as CORSIA, like we mentioned, the PACM, the EU framework. So all these are considered when we are drafting the methodologies and have been considered when drafting the activity requirements. Now, a few more words about eligible activities. We can have roughly two categories. We talk about if we talk about engineered CDR, we will be referring to enhanced mineralization, enhanced weathering, which is what we mentioned earlier. About enhancing already natural processing, natural processes, and speeding these up. The same goes with the alkalinity enhancement, which is strongly related, and to some level as well that would apply to ocean fermentation, which which is actually not yet included in the activity requirement, but the future revision is already expected to include it. So that's why it's mentioned here, but also in this dotted line. Then we have the more modular activities, which are more localized processes, and not as to differentiate from those which are basic natural processes enhanced. So the modular processes are very local based and usually associated with the transportation from site to site and very clearly defined project boundaries. And there we can talk about direct ocean capture, direct air capture, CO2 capture from biomass, capture from other CO2 capture from other industrial processes. This would be then transported and stored usually in geological storage or in specific products such as cement, other construction materials, but sky's the limit. And again, there's the deep ocean storage, another thing that we envision to include in here, but to the current version of the activity requirement, it does not yet include this. This is being discussed. The ocean-related aspects are being discussed under our expert groups, expert team, and we expect this to be included eventually. We'll keep you, of course, updated when that happens. If you see here on the right-hand side of the screen, we talk about approved methodologies. I'll expand that in a minute. The carbon mineralization methodology and the geological storage of biomass emissions, and very closely following and still in development is a biochar methodology. I'm sure many of you would have encountered the technology and maybe even the need from project activity developers to have such methodology, but also sustainable sourcing of biomass. Basically, how to use sustainable biomass residues, etc. All this structured in a new upcoming methodology. So we're talking about methodology. A few words about this. There is the carbon mineralization using waste. That's an existing methodology. Now we have version 2, which is has been published June this year, and is actually roughly already PACM aligned. Same goes with the biomass fermentation with carbon capture and storage. Also published earlier this year. Slightly expanded scope to include now bioenergy and other industrial processes. And again, we have been aiming to align with the PACM requirements for this. Yes, let's maybe step into a few things which might be specifically of interest to you for as a VVB. Some of a checklist of what you would be expected to be doing. First part, very straightforward, the eligibility and design compliance to make sure that activity complies with the activity requirements. No, with and with methodology requirements, with eligibility criteria and these. The second aspect is regarding reversal risks, and we recognize that this will need expert opinion and knowledge to get this right, to make sure that the implemented measures have been designed and implemented as required, but also as is subject matter experts would recommend this to be done. And there is the issue with the buffer calculation. So a lot of activity with developers would still not be familiar with how the buffer allocation is expected to work. And this will be part of your tasks to make sure that they comply with the requirements there. And specifically for verification, the review any potential reversal risks. Again, we recognize that new expertise will be needed for that, and we are very much excited to have this co-developing together with you. As for the aspects related to monitoring data, so very much as you already familiar to, you would be expected to evaluate the monitoring plan and the data quality and uncertainty evaluation, which includes what we are very familiar with, measures associated with calibration, but also uncertainty associated with data sources. Methodologies will already do and will increasingly include specific requirements for uncertainty evaluation. This is something needed for Article 6, but also something that we have been working on to include in the methodologies for a while now. And we have some ongoing internal work to make this more standardized in our methodologies. Until then, this is still a methodology-specific aspect of how exactly uncertainty is to be quantified and treated. But you can expect more work on that. And the new reporting templates will include specific sections for dealing with this uncertainty evaluation. As for the life cycle emissions and net removals, I mentioned earlier the LCA. So you would need to verify that the project accounted for all significant emissions associated with the entire removal process. The entire process will be defined in the methodology. Just so you'll be aware, the project boundary will be a bit more going further upstream and downstream than maybe some other methodologies would require. And lastly here, the SDGs and safeguards, like I mentioned, these are very important to us, and I don't think this is new to you. Then you would need to make sure that these issues have been discussed in the stakeholder consultation and the safeguards have been implemented. And again, since these technologies do have some controversies associated with them and some very legitimate risks associated with them, these safeguards will be taken very seriously, and again will be detailed in the methodologies and in the activity requirements. Good important to note that not everything associated with these projects will be found only in these activity requirements and only in these new methodologies. There will be, of course, need to rely on our already established requirements and sources. Reversal risks we are defined in the methodologies and in tool 4 specifically, something you might you will need to be familiar with then, and the safeguards beyond what's going to be mentioned in the methodologies themselves. We'll have to follow, of course, the safeguards, safeguarding principles. And certainly, as I mentioned earlier, there's some guidance in development, and until then, you would basically be expected to comply with the methodology requirements associated. And that's it from my side. A bit intensive, and I would like to open it in the chat, or I apologize, I haven't had a chance to look at the chat till now, so give me a second. But
there's no actually questions in the chat. Let me look at the Q&A. No, but if anybody has a question, feel free to raise your hand.
I do hope it means everything is clear, and as always, we are open for questions. Again, I recommend to see the past presentation on this matter if you haven't yet. And of course, again, let us know if there are any other issues. We recognize this is a very new sector, but I'm sure you, as you know already, there is pressure from developers, from buyers to have this integrated, and we are very excited to push forward with this and hopefully ensure that all these projects are being done to the highest standard possible.
Great. I don't see any questions, so I think we can wrap up. We have only one last slide on a feedback. Maybe if you can scan the QR code, or I can send a link in the chat just to take a minute to share your feedback with us. And yeah, in the meanwhile, I would like to thank you all for staying and for making it to the breakout rooms. We had some technical challenges, but I'm glad you guys made it. And yeah, thank you so much. And hopefully see you next Tuesday in our webinar on the launch of our new learning platform. Have a lovely rest of your day, and see you soon. Bye. Thank you so much, Gil, for the slides and the presentation.
Thanks everyone for attending, and have a lovely day. Bye.
So yes, let me briefly introduce to you our new SOC guidelines. And before we jump into the presentation, let me tell you, and this is maybe a repetition, but we hosted a webinar 2 weeks ago on the 14th of October. And there is a recording available now on their website. And we introduced here also the link for those who cannot join. And let me also tell you, this is a little bit of a repetition of the webinar, of the content of that webinar, but we're going to be putting a layer on what are the, let's say, what is the role of the validation and verification bodies for implementing these SOC guidelines. So just as an introduction, we can say that the new SOC guidelines are fully aligning with our SOC framework. And important to mention is that we are bridging in this sense the gap between the theoretical concepts, which are in the framework, and the practical implementation of the SOC models. Also important to showcase here to say that these guidelines are not prescribing the use of any specific models to represent any specific ecosystem interactions, but it focuses mainly on the outcomes that are produced when applying and evaluating the SOC models on the context of any SOC sequestration projects. Also, therefore, the SOC guidelines are used to showcase on how model-based approaches can be used to quantify, verify, and report the changes in soil carbon, and also combining with the field measurements to calibrate those models and produce, of course, more accurate and regional relevant results. So let me move forward with the next slide, and this is a little bit a repetition from the webinar. You see here the project developer workflow. So this is on the guidelines, and it's important to mention that this is a little bit the journey that the project developer goes to implement the new SOC model guidelines. On the green box here, you can see this is a little bit on the perspective of the validation and verification bodies, kind of giving a little bit of an overview about the roles of the VVBs in each one of those stages and steps. So the purpose here is now we're going to go through those stages or so through those steps. And then in the next slides, we're going to be a little bit breaking down those steps and getting a little bit more, giving a little bit more of an overview about what do they mean and what are it is expected for each one of those steps. So let's jump to it. So first of all, we have the model objectives. This is, of course, the first step where the project developer sets the purpose, the scope, also decides what the model should achieve at this stage, and also what is the relevant data. So at this stage, the VVB involvement is not required. This is again an internal planning and also preparing of the project developer to prepare for audit. The next stage is the model selection. Here's where the project developer selects an appropriate model. So what is the role of the VVB in this case, or at this stage, is during the validation, the VVB needs to assess whether the model choice is appropriate, and also that this selection criteria has been well documented throughout the process. So, and of course, provides the approval of moving forward with this proposed model chosen by the project developer. The next step is the data calibration. So this data collection. The data collection covers two sets of data sets, let's say. So we have the calibration data set and the validation data sets. These are two distinct data sets that needs to be separated and needs to be also independent, because the calibration data set is the one that we're going to be using to fit to the project context, fit the data set to the project context, and the validation data sets to fit the model. So this is very important that the VVB at this stage for the data collection approach, which needs to be also validated by the VVB, reviews this data collection approach and ensure that these data sets are suitable, are representative, and also are independent from each other. Now, we've moved forward with the calibration, the model calibration, and this again is to fit the data set to the project context. And this is where the VVB reviews the calibration methods, also the parameter choices, and ensures that this calibration and validation data sets are properly separated. Again, this is crucial. This is very important. That's why we're going to be repeating this over and over again, because it's part of this SOC guidelines, and this needs to be strictly is required to be complied. Then we move forward with the model validation. So once the model has been calibrated, we move to the model validation, and this is the central role of the VVB here, is to assess the model performance. So here's where the VVB will check the metrics. evaluate the uncertainties. I'm going to be talking about that in a couple of minutes, and also determine whether the model fit for the purpose before the project moved forward using the model, the selected model. Then we move forward with the next step, which is the model predictions and uncertainty estimation. And this is once the model has been validated and, of course, calibrated, the model is used to make the predictions and also estimate the uncertainties. So at this stage, what the VVB needs to do is review how this uncertainty quantification is taken care of and ensure that this monitoring and reporting approach accounts for the model predictions. And finally, we have the model verification. This is the final step. And this is where the VVB actually compares the model predictions to the actual project measurements over time. So as you can see here, this workflow is an iterative approach, which goes from the model calibration to the model verification. And this is ensuring, as we have here, the approach of refinement and also the recalibration, where we can also taking field measurements. This is very important to take these steps and refine each run, so we can have at the end of the day a model which is quite that can let's say provide reliable results and also accurate results for the purpose of the modeling. Now, I would like to give you a brief overview about an example. This is, again, just a fictitious example, just to showcase how are we going to be computing and reporting on the SOC changes throughout the project life cycle. So say we have first of all, we have the first strategy, which is the design-based estimation of the stock. And this is covering, of course, or entailing also ground measure data points. So at this stage, we may not have much data. So also is important to mention that at this stage, we can also accept or have modeling, for instance, to use before the sampling campaigns goes on to quantify first the stock variance over the project spatial boundaries in case we have also different strata, and also determine the required sample size. So this is what's happening at the very beginning. Now, once we have time 5, for instance, after 5 years, we would have another approach for the SOC changes. I mean, to quantify the SOC. And this would be the model-assisted estimation. And this would be the quantification of the SOC stock via the modeling and additioning to, or we would have the addition of the ground measured samples. So at this stage, we would have the calibration, and therefore we can have slowly have this model and can be used for further purposes to actually quantify the SOC stock for the project. Now, after 10 years or even 15, we will have another approach or another strategy, which is the model-based estimation. So now we have the model, and now we have also the field measurements that were used for calibrating this model. So here at this stage, we have the fully quantification of the mean and the total SOC stocks over the project spatial boundaries. And using, we are able here to use the SOC model for quantification of SOC. Now, let me break down a little bit that workflow that you were seeing, and to just briefly state what is important in each one of those steps for the implementation of the SOC guidelines. So first of all, we have the model selection. This is very important. And we have in the guidance 7 main steps. So these 7 main steps cover, first of all, the definition of the project context, mainly we have to take into account the land use, for instance. We take into account the soil types, the management, for instance, practices, the climate conditions, and etc. Then we would have the research models. I mean, this is where the project developers would look for appropriate models according to to their data availability. So there are models, of course, that require more parameters, that are more complex, require more parameters than others. And at the end, we would have the shortlist and comparison of these models and a final selection. So at this stage, again, model selection would have to be validated by the VVB and approved. Now we move forward with the data collection. Here, the guidelines are very, very clear in saying we have the two main data sets. These are the calibration data used to calibrate the model and also and to be fitted to the project context. And we would have the validation data, which is to validate the model itself. So this must be statistically independent and are mutually exclusive. So according to the guidelines, there is a distance that needs to be there is set up then a distance. This is a minimum distance of these two data sets, which is 30 meters. And then once we have the data collection, we would move forward with the model calibration. And for this, we have also some requirements, such as the gathering. We have here the gathering of the local data, for instance. Also, we will have more understanding of the parameters needed for the calibration. We could also have initial setting. So in case we need more parameters or we need more extra data that we don't have from the field measurements, we can also use peer-reviewed articles to have an initial setting of that model. Also, at this stage, the project developer is able to choose the calibration method to be used, start calibrating that method, that model, and this is going to be like an iterative refinement on an ongoing basis. And once we have that, then this will be followed by the validation. So what do we have here during the validation? So moving forward on that, remember that workflows, we would have the model validation. So once we have a very good calibrated model, then we would need to be implementing that model and have the direct quantification of the SOC changes through the model. Important here at this stage also is that the VVB also reviews or assess the performance metrics of that model. And this is to check, of course, the error, the precision, and also the variability. And these are the tests to be used. Then we move forward with the uncertainty quantification. Also important to notice here, the uncertainty must be quantified for all SOC model outputs using the two-sided intervals of the 90% probability. And for the uncertainty quantification, also a couple of methods are mentioned in the guidelines that are used, which are the Monte Carlo simulations, the bootstrapping and quantile regression. This is actually to measure the intervals and also that are needed for the model. And then we would move forward with the model verification, which is the assessment of the model performance. This takes place every 5 years, so this is very important to keep in mind. And it needs to be also, the requirement here is that the data source needs to come from data source A. What are we calling the data source A? Are the direct measurements that are coming from the project area. We have other types of sources, but this is the one that we are going to be needing to perform the model verification. Further on, and now this is, I'm going to stop here and just before I start presenting this one, Gold Standard has now a checklist for auditors for validation and verification, exclusively for these SOC guidelines to be implemented in the SOC guidelines models, and this is it. So this is a little bit of an overview what you're going to be expected on that on that list. And this is going to be on the checklist, and we're going to be sharing this, of course, very soon. But just for you to know what kind of information do you need during the validation. So for instance, you need to confirm that the modeling objectives were communicated to gold standard before any start of the calculation of the SOC changes throughout the project life. Then other checks are, for instance, to confirm that the validation and and calibration data sets are mutually exclusive. Also, the confirmation of the minimum geographical distance, which is at least 30 meters between any calibration and validation data set points. Data suitability, yes, to assess the validation data is representative for each modeling unit. So this is also another check under validation. And of course, we have a couple of evidence that needs to be backed up during the validation, which are, for instance, review field logs or any laboratory certificates or even review field IDs, etc. Now, another important role during the validation, another checks that the VVBs needs to do during the validation are mainly these two. First, required statistical checks. I mean, this is to validate the model. So therefore, we have the ones that were mentioned in the previous slides to calculate the error, precision, and variability of the model. And on the second, on the uncertainty leakage, also a couple of checks also to check which are the interval confirmation, also confirm the model output uncertainty, the total uncertainty, and of course the crediting traceability. So these are all aligned with the SOC framework uncertainty deduction. Now, what about the verification? A couple of checks. Important to mention we have three main areas to cover. First, the data and traceability audit. So source of the data, again, the data source needs to be the data source A for the verification purposes. So these are new measurements collected inside the project area. Evidence traceability where we talked about, and also the stock computation. So this is the VVB also reconfirming the stock calculation formulas, for instance, and model choice and reproducibility. This is now bringing me to the next point, which is very important to have a check here to confirm that the model version used the issuance that aligns with the one that has been validated. In case we have a change here, this needs to go through a project design change. And this is very important to keep in mind. And of course, the VVB needs to go and execute these targeted reruns of the model and not accept just the ones the project developer is delivering, but go for the reruns using the PD's script. Again, if the script has been changed, this needs to go for project design review. And also, and this is for, of course, to reproduce the predictions and the verification statistics. Metric computation, yes, this is also again to validate the model. So we have to, the VB needs to be able to recompute this again. So this statistical tests for error, precision, and variability. And of course, at the end, we have the reporting. Again, this checklist will make sure you receive the checklist as well. This going to be published also on our website, and we invite you to take a look at that. And I know I'm running out of time, so therefore this is the last slide. I'm going to leave you with my last slide, which is these are the type of evidence that you have to take into account for validation and verification. This is not exhaustive. This is just a couple of examples what to expect. And this is again all in the checklist that we are going to be sharing soon. Thank you. And this is just the support documents. Again, the supporting documents, this checklist, and a compilation of the Q&As also coming from the webinar on SOC guidelines will be shared with you next week. So you can expect that. And if you have any questions by now, happy to take those. Or any questions coming in, of course, will be on this compilation of Q&As. Thank you.
Thank you, Giovanna. for the great and very exhaustive presentation. I hope it has been useful for our audience, and especially in combination with the previous webinar and all the resources that we are going to publish soon. We have a few questions. The first one is there any requirement related to the use of independent monitoring expert?
For the experts, I mean, we are expected to use or to have the whole skills in the team. So for independent experts, this can be, of course, the case, but you have to make sure that within that team we have a GS approved auditor. I don't know if I'm yes, this is the question. So yes, so external consultants might be there's a possibility to contract them. Yes.
Okay, and about the labs that analyze the soil samples, do they have to be ISO 17025 accredited? Do you know that from the top of your head, or will that be in the Q&A?
We will have to revise that again, but thank you for the question. This is very important. Yeah, we'll have to
Chris.
go through this. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll make sure that our colleagues add it to the FAQs. Oh, some people had issues seeing the screen. Of course, we will share the presentation and the recording of this session. Marcelo, you have had your hand up since the beginning of this session. Do you have anything to share? I will try to unmute you. I've allowed your microphone. You can unmute yourself, Marcelo.
Yes, I do actually, Marta. I didn't have access to the presentation since the beginning, and I was trying to reach you out, and unfortunately I couldn't.
Apologies.
I don't know if it happened with someone else. I couldn't even reach your chat.
Yes, the chat was blocked for some reason. We've had a lot of technical issues, and I apologize for the huge technical issues. And at least you've made it. Could you hear Giovanna at least?
I could. Yes, I did. Yeah, I could hear her. I just couldn't interact.
See the slides.
And or
sorry
see
for that.
anything. No worries.
Well, we'll work on that. We'll work on our technical issues and see if we can solve them for the next time.
Okay, thank you.
Apologies. Any other questions on the topic of SOC model guidelines? Is everybody excited about this? Are you scared that this is a new era where you don't audit actual physical things but models? How does everybody feel about this?
Or any experiences you want to share with us was also going to be quite useful at this stage to kind of review our SOC guidelines, maybe.
If you raise your hand, I can allow your microphones. I don't know if I can allow everybody's microphones now. I think now everybody can unmute themselves. Marcelo, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to share my experience. I used to audit projects in this kind of projects in Vera, and I wanted to tell that in general, an auditor doesn't have the skills to audit a model or to validate a model. So it needs an expert, an independent expert, or another expert. So I'm really sure that this will be needed to complete the audit process. Yeah. Otherwise, well, it will be very difficult to validate and to proceed with the audit process. Thank you.
Yeah, that is extremely important. Indeed, we have this list of competencies that the auditing team will need to have in order to be able to cover these kind of audits. And that's also something we would like to share with you, and we'll probably collect your feedback before final publication. So look out for that, and please do share your comments. Sheila says she's really excited to experience these alignment audits and even to validate SOC modules in the project. So thank you for your excitement, Sheila. That is really good to hear. You know how difficult it is to present in front of a bunch of black screens. So, and I'm also very happy to see the Martins back in the audience. It's been a while. Martin Opitz and Martin Seitz. Um, long, long ago, land use and forestry experts as well. And a lot of new people that are also differentiating into LOOF. Anyone else that would like to ask a question or comment?
Share experience.
I have a question. Like the models are like some standard models will be available on the GS website itself, or all the projects will be having a very specific models case by case, or say suppose if you have a peer-reviewed journals or something for the for referring those models, so the way they are described is much different for each case. So the difficulty in following, like, will they be customized to align with the GS style of representation, something like that? I mean, do it make sense?
Yeah,
So,
Giovanna, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, this is a very valid question. So I was posting at the beginning. So this SOC guidelines are not prescribing any models. So what it gives is the guidelines how to use that and how to select a model. So these are the requirements that are on that guideline. So in that guideline, you can see also some of the literature that has been used to produce the document. But these models needs to be, let's say, selected by the project developer according to their own needs. So this will vary accordingly, depending on again, a lot of factors that are important to take into account. So these are for instance, is it a crop? Is it for afforestation, for reforestation? The management practices? Is it an agroforestry? Is this what kind of project it is? The different types, soil types, depths. So all this will play a role for selecting that, and for selecting that model, especially data availability is also an issue. But there are not any models here where what we are prescribing here in this guidance. So this is something that indeed the project developer needs to go for research and start seeing what would be more appropriate according to their own needs and according to their own modeling objectives. So this is yes, this is it. I don't know, Martha, if you want to add anything to that, but this is the case.
And then for auditors, it's simply whatever the project
developer
proposes as a model, that's
Yeah.
what you need to validate. So
Exactly.
you don't have to make a choice.
I'll just extend the question a little bit. Like, if you have say, you have considered a particular model, and that will have some level of accuracy. So every model will have its own level of accuracy.
Yeah.
So once the model is selected by the project developer, so the VVB will be evaluating the model depending on the level of accuracy which is presented in the model. So is that right? When we are looking at the calculations of the emissions or emission reductions.
Exactly. So the guidelines pretty much set up the requirements that this model needs to have, let's say. So this is where the VBBs, it gives you really a detailed description on how you VBB needs to review that model. So if it is appropriate or not. So there are a lot of, as I was presenting, a lot of tests, statistical tests. So there are some requirements that this model needs to, and also a threshold of accuracy that they need to achieve. So As this is not, again, this is not a prescription. This is not us telling what models to be used. That is something that the project developer selects, and the VVB needs to go through the same path. I mean, go into the reruns of that model and also make sure that the accuracy level and also precision and variability is set up as the guidelines. So that's it. So the job of the VVB is practically assessing what the project developer has chosen. So that's I don't know if it is clear or not. Please let me know. Hope I could address that question
I can
properly.
understand a bit, but say suppose at least like, okay, I mean, independent of the model in GS, like will there be at least the tools available to do the uncertainty analysis or something, the important parameters which make us choose the model or validate the model? I think those things will be available in GS, isn't it?
Right, we have the different requirements exactly for each one of those, for validation, for verification of the model, for the uncertainties. So this is all very well described in the guidance. So I recommend you to go through that. If you have any questions, happy to answer. And it's very detailed. I mean, I'm of course in this webinar it's a little bit too short to be going more into depth. But it gives you a little bit of a flavor of what to expect from that guidance. So yes, there are requirements there. These are the requirements that the VV needs to comply with, and it's well drafted, elaborated there.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comment or question you may have? Otherwise, we are on time. If there's any other questions you would like to address or clarifications? So if not, I really enjoyed. I really appreciate the questions and clarifications. I really look forward to, in case you have any more, please write us to vvb@goldstandard.org. We're here for you. And yeah, it's been my pleasure. And I hope to see you next time soon during another VVB session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. And I hope you can fill out the feedback form and tell us about all the technical issues that you had. And also, if you managed to enjoy the training despite those, we will send the feedback form link again and also in your email. We really take these feedback forms seriously and we learn from them and we try to improve every time. And we try different options every time, as you see, and sometimes we succeed and sometimes we fail. So please keep talking to us and telling us how to improve so that we serve you better. See you all next week at the Gold Standard Learning Platform webinar. It's based on a platform called Litmus. We shouldn't say that. But see you all on the 4th of November. There's 2 webinars. I hope to see you both on at least one. No need to join both. And to see you directly in the Gold Standard Learning Platform for a lot of fun learning, training, calibration, and feedback. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye. Till next time.